Yay! I think we're live. That's very exciting. Welcome, everyone, to the Renegade Society Radio Show. I am Sara Erickson, and we are joined today by some lovely guests. Actually, it's just me because Scott's on vacation and Danny's webcam was broken. So I am joined by Jonathan Gilmour and Doug Levandowski, who are the designers of Kids on Bikes.
Hey.
Very exciting. And Ian Moss also joined us. We're not sure why, but he's here. Just kidding.
Hello.
So, Ian works very closely with John and designs lots of amazing things. You may also know Ian from Dinosaur Island, and Jonathan from Dinosaur Island as well. And Doug has other super secret projects he's working on that we're going to talk about later. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, we're excited. So Kids on Bikes Strange Adventures just came out this last Wednesday,
Yes.
a week ago. And yeah, so do you guys want to tell us a little bit about Kids on Bikes in general and then what's going on with the Strange Adventures in here?
Sure. So couple of years ago, John and I started working on Kids on Bikes to make just a light, easy to pick up, easy to get started role-playing game that really focused on narrative instead of a lot of dice rolling. And, you know, we worked on it for a while, honed it, crafted it, and in the end, it was Kids on Bikes. As part of the Kickstarter, we got a bunch of awesome creative people to write up some adventure prompts to kind of create a world for people to jump into and play. And those were initially part of the Deluxe Edition that was available through the Kickstarter.
Use visual aids. Look at that.
That's right.
I know. I feel like I'm in a classroom. This is perfect.
Well, that's what I do from 8:20 to 3:21 in the afternoon.
I can tell.
I think that's the second time this week somebody said that your actions made them feel like they were being taught to.
Yes.
So you said 321. So like all the kids are like looking at the wall and they're just like, nope, not 320, 321.
Well,
No,
not in my
Doug
class. In my class, they're focused on me.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm so entertaining.
Nice. So you were saying before I rudely interrupted you.
Not rudely at all. No.
So you have the original version of Kids on Bikes, which is basically just the rule set without a lot of extra anything going on, extra fluff, I guess. But bare bones, exactly what you need to play. Mm-hmm. Then we have the deluxe version that includes these modules that were made by a whole bunch of really cool creators. So that has the modules in addition to the rule set and a comic that's in there as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, comic by Jim Zub.
Oh, it's awesome. It's
so
a really, really fantastic comic. I'm glad you guys include that.
Yeah.
So then Strange Adventures has everything except the comic book, right?
Does it? I thought it had the comic book. I don't know.
Well, let's find out. I don't see the comic in here.
Oh, okay.
So almost everything that was in the deluxe that wasn't in the original.
I think the comic states Kickstarter exclusive, but it is all the modules that we included in the Deluxe Edition. So those people who missed out on the Kickstarter and wanted that content can pick it up with Strange Adventures 1.
Yes.
So tell me about these modules a little bit, because as somebody who's played D&D before, I've played some other role-playing campaigns, Pathfinder, for example, where it lays out every single thing that you do. What's special about these modules?
Well, I think the special thing is that really they're there to help you get into the world building a little bit faster. So they're great for like a convention game where you want to play a whole session in like 2.5 hours. They just kind of give you some different prompts that you can use to speed up the world building. But they all kind of, some of them have special rules that are specific to that module, or different monsters, different powered characters, and NPCs that really help you just bring the world to life really quickly. But it was still important to us that the players crafted the story. Right. So it wasn't like a pre-described adventure like a lot of other RPGs do.
Yeah, it really encourages a lot of creativity. And what I like about watching people play this at conventions is that every single table is going to have a completely different adventure. Mm-hmm. It may start in the same place, you may have some of the same rules, but you are going to tell a unique story. And that's something that I think is really special about Kids on Bikes in general. Amazing to watch. So I think you did an excellent job with that.
I think I've run my module probably about 15 or 20 times now at conventions, and every time it's just completely different, and they take it in a completely unexpected direction, which I love.
What's one of the favorite stories that you've seen a group tell together during one of those events?
Go ahead, Doug.
Mine would probably be at Origins. It was the first one I ran at Origins, and a group crafted their own world. We did a sort of abbreviated world building, and it ended with a 9-year-old kid who was also a werewolf, and them like fighting off this werewolf and hurting it very badly, but then it turning back into a kid, and just the sort of player response to that was so cool. Like they were just so into and so empathetic towards the kid that was really cool to see. And they just had a great time with it. Like the thing that they hit the werewolf with was the slacker's bong that he had with him. And then when he was in pain, they decided that marijuana has some pain-killing effects. So they got a werewolf stoned, and that was pretty great.
You're not going to find that in a lot of other role-playing games. Another very important question for you, Doug, from our audience. Who is your favorite Origins roommate? You were talking about Origins there a second ago.
I was. How do you choose a star in the sky?
This might be a loaded question, by the way.
Sure. I can't decide between my two favorite Origins roommates, so I would have to say Jason Miller and Luke Miunch get like top billing as my favorite too.
I have a feeling that one of them might be in our chat right now.
Oh, really? I'm shocked.
Well, Jason, now you have your answer. You are half of his favorite.
Cheers, bud.
It's amazing. So, John, how about you? Any favorite moments from Kids on Bikes?
Yeah, I think the charity game that Doug and I ran at Grand Con last year, we did a couple different charity games where all the ticket sales go to charity. And they built this really cool town. We did the full world building because I think we had like a 4-hour session. Mm-hmm. And they built this really neat town based on a local Michigan town that kind of everybody had a lot of touchstones for. And there was just some really unique things about that town that made it stand out. I think there was a circus train wreck there at one point.
Yep.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, and one of the only drive-in adult theaters like in the world, which the town was well known for, but it's really a weird thing that probably shouldn't have in a town.
I don't even understand how that works, but okay.
I don't think anybody does. It's just a unique and colorful town, and they really spent so much time like building all the rumors and everything. It was just a great game.
Yeah,
wow. Yeah, that sounds incredible. Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to be doing more of these events at conventions we have coming up later this year. I know a lot of event staff that have worked with you guys in the past are going to be at Origins and Gen Con and running Kids on Bikes events there. So anybody watching who's really excited about playing, please check out those events. It's going to be exciting. Cool. So anything else in the Kids on Bikes world that we should be looking for that you can allude to without spoiling anything?
Well, I think without spoiling anything, this is called Strange Adventures 1. and all that implies.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good hint. I'm excited to see what else is in there because so far you've already put out everything that was in the Kickstarter. So everything that we know about has now happened, and there's so much more potential for this. I think the setting is really fun in that it's the idea that you have no cell phones, you're in the 80s, early 90s, and there's all this mystery in the world. But then there's so many different little bits of new different types of settings in the modules that you can explore. And then just the creativity that you can put into that world. It's amazing. So we're really looking forward to more stuff there. That should be a lot of fun. So Ian, what have you been working on lately? Not Kids on Bikes related, because obviously.
No, that would, I mean, if someone were to ask me to do that, I would definitely do that. No, I do a lot of just regular designs with companies, pretty awesome companies. Don't want to name names, but I think in the future it's safe to say that there might be some boxes that also have my name and like a blue R on them. I don't know what that would mean.
You're just gonna try it out and see how that goes, right? Yeah. Like with a crayon. Hope for the best.
That's how he's got most of his design credits. He just like writes his name next to mine on a box.
They just show it to someone and they're like, yeah, no, I like that. Let's do that.
Nice. No, I'm very impressed with what you've done, Ian, even though obviously you do have your name on the box with a lot of other people sometimes. I love what you do, except when you beat me in our fantasy movie league regularly every week. That might be a problem, but otherwise.
Yeah, I rise and fall a lot in the fantasy movie league. I make some strong assumptions. I think the one week I just put Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for all 10 screens and just saw what happened. I was like, I'm just gonna roll the dice.
Oh, it's so bad. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with that. Oh, excellent. So I heard a rumor today that Ian and John, you both played Terror Below earlier on a live stream. Is that true? I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, we did. I got it yesterday, and it was a little bit too late to put it into the plans for our stream Friday. So we wanted to play it today so we could talk about it tonight and get super excited. And we kind of threw an impromptu stream because we did our on Wednesdays we do Coffee and Contemplation, which is where we pick a topic and talk about it with the chat, and people can call in. And then on top of that, we did a brief live stream of the second half of the game. Once we didn't want to embarrass ourselves by not knowing the rules, so we waited until we had a handle for the game and then started the live stream.
Nice. That's awesome. So I actually have one of, I believe there are 4 copies that we digitally printed. They're out there, and you guys have another one, so that's pretty special. So what do you think about it?
I loved it. I can't wait to play it at 4 players or 5 players. I think the interplayer conflict is really interesting in it. And at first, we didn't get the hang of what was going on, but once we saw the pieces start to fall into place.
Yeah, then we started to turn on each other.
Yeah.
It really gets the experience to be exactly the thing I want it to be. While being similar but legally distinct from some movies that we love.
We don't know anything about that.
I mean, it's kind of one of my hallmarks. I think I have a few games like that.
Yeah. It can still be a fun setting, theme, idea, and not be legally the same thing as something else. So
Right.
that works out fine.
It was actually one of the things that we had talked about during our stream, and a little bit like we touched on, is like sometimes it's actually better to not be the official thing because it lets you kind of make the game what you want it to be. And Terror Below feels that way, where like it feels like its own thing, even though it is obviously inspired by other things. Which is what I love about Kids on Bikes also. Like Kids on Bikes is Kids on Bikes because it doesn't have the same world. Like it can be any world you want it to be. It is not restricted to just this one world.
It's so true. And really, we as a company and the people who work at Renegade have worked on a ton of licenses before. If you look at our histories, we've worked on World of Warcraft, Star Wars, Star Trek, pretty much any other really big license that Marvel, like DC, that you can imagine. And we could have made this into a licensed game if we wanted to, but there's so much more world building that we can do with it the way that we did. And we did really want to explore that. We have so many other things that we want to put into this setting. And if you look a little bit more closely, I think that there are lots of different distinct crossbred experiments from the government that aren't just worms. We've got scorpions in there. We have an anglerfish. There's lots of really cool stuff that we would not have been able to do had this been a license for only one specific desert worm dwelling type of game. So we're pretty excited to be able to do all of that. And I'm really happy you guys liked it, because I think this game reminds me in a narrative way of a lot of the stuff that you have worked on previously, in that it gives you as a player all of the tools to create your own story and experiences that you'll be talking about later. When, for example, in Clank, when you dive into the dungeon and you do all this cool stuff and you get attacked by the dragon and then you run out and you're the last one out of the dungeon, that's a story that you're going to tell people later. And the mechanics don't give you that exact story, but they allow you to create that on your own. And that's a much more exciting experience than just retelling what somebody else has already done.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I think that's true in a lot of your games too.
Thank you.
So I haven't played yet. Tell me what's it about? When I picked this up at Gen Con, having backed the Kickstarter for that, what am I going to be experiencing there?
Yeah, so Terra Below is a pick up and deliver game, but that is only the very surface of it. You are a person that lives in this Nevada town, and you are trying to collect these eggs that have been scattered around the desert from these underground creatures who burrow around, come up, lay eggs, and then go off. But the government created these crossbred monsters and want those eggs back, so they're willing to pay you for them. You take your vehicle, you go around in the desert, you collect these eggs, and you take them to different locations. When you drop them off, you get special bonuses depending on the location that you took them to. But meanwhile, there are worms or crossbred worm scorpion creatures underneath the ground burrowing around that can be distracted and their movement modified by the other players, which means that you need to be careful where you're moving and try and move in a way that won't get you attacked by these worms when they inevitably pop up out of the ground. But you can also move them on your turn. So every time you play a card, that card has both the direction and amount of movement the worm's going to do and the number of actions you get to choose. So depending on which card from your hand you place and which worm you place it on will change the direction and ending location of that worm.
I think my favorite card that I utilized to hurt Ian a bunch of times was the 18-wheeler.
Oh my God.
Because the 18-wheeler just attracts the worm directly to where you are, but it gives you a ton of movement, so you can just run away. So
yeah, so he would get near me and then put the 18-wheeler down, and then the worm would move to me, and then he would run away, and I would get attacked.
Oh dear. There might be a slight rules confusion on that card that we will maybe clarify, but the idea is that it does give you the most possible actions on your turn. But the last thing that happens is the text on the card. So it would end its move. Okay. It would end its movement where you are if you played it.
Gotcha.
That makes
sense. He was being a little extra mean to you, Ian.
Pretty par for the course.
I would call it a fun frustration.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, a slight distinction that probably had quite a bit of impact on your game.
Yeah, but Ian still won. I just had more practice from attached all the time.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. So yeah, the interesting part of the game, like you already understand almost everything you need to know to play from my very brief explanation, but the cards have a lot of varied text that makes them do really cool different things. I think my favorite card is the incubation ray. You play it and anyone who has an egg in front of them has now been infected, and they roll a die, and on a 1, 2, or 3, their character just dies because basically they've been infected by these alien creatures and they burst out and kill them. So unfortunately, you can just die like that. But the good thing is that you have 3 characters. If any one of them dies, you just go on to the next one. And then if you ever go to the hospital and deliver an egg there, you can revive one of your fallen characters. So you're not really out of the game. And if anyone does lose all 3 characters, the game immediately goes into the final round.
Okay.
Yeah, John just was not allowing Shep to die. He wanted the dog. He wanted his dog leader to survive.
The dog is so good.
Yeah, it was my only choice. I just pretend I didn't have any other characters.
Have you read this story? We're right in the middle of where Shep is running around on his own now.
Oh no, I need to catch up on it.
Oh,
After
it's so
playing
good.
it, I'm more inspired to like go back and see all of the story things because I want to know where all these moments came from.
Yeah. Oh man, it's super fun. So it's written by Banana Chan, and she has been creating this story for us, and then we put little bits of it out in updates or on our Facebook page. And we have fantastic art from Eric, the artist that's doing the game, that goes along with it. So it's been really neat. I've been surprised that some of the backers are so into the story and some of them don't care at all. And I would have guessed with a game that's so thematic that the story would be important to all of the players, but it's just a good reminder that everyone comes to the table for a different reason. So that's been an interesting experience. I loved watching your recent Coffee and Conversations podcast or video stream about what Kickstarter peeps want. And that was a really fascinating conversation. So what would you say is the #1 requested thing that you've seen in your Kickstarters?
Oh, let me think. Go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of it is clarity. So like when something is looking at a Kickstarter page, they want to know. Like I don't normally watch the Kickstarter videos. Mm-hmm. About 50% of the time I'll check them out, but most time I want to like scroll down and see specifically, okay, how does this play? Show me some pictures. Where's the hook? And I think that was true for a lot of things. And I guess the presentation does that a lot. And obviously the art helps. But if it's very clear, like all of those steps, then I think that is one of the things that people are talking about that they looked for. Is they want to just look at it and know this is going to be for me.
Ian, the chat is wondering if you could shake the camera more. It's not quite enough like Cloverfield.
Oh no.
I'm leaning on my rail, and I think that's
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
Thanks, Doug. Doug's helping out. We can make him all seasick, see if he'll happen. Oh no, what I look for in a Kickstarter. No, Ian. Oh. Worst Origins roommate ever. Oh no.
He's never been my Origins roommate. It's gonna stay that way.
That's right.
We did trick him and you into eating spicy pierogies last year.
They were not that spicy.
This one's spinach, said Doug, the liar.
It was not spicy.
It was not spinach. I think it was habanero.
Oh, there's a restaurant in Las Vegas we used to go to that would give you jalapeno popper bites, but one of them would be special. And you didn't know which one it would be, but it was so spicy. So, of course, you challenge each other to dares and eat them. It's sort of like Russian roulette, but with jalapeno poppers.
I would just eat all the jalapeno poppers.
Yeah. So you would win that dare then.
Mm-hmm.
Nice,
I win
nice.
most food dares unless they involve meat.
So we need to get you together with Dan Bojanowski, who was the developer on, our senior game producer for Terra Below. He does Bojo dares that are pretty hilarious. He made Danny eat mayonnaise last year. But it was like mayonnaise dipped in hollandaise sauce. It was super disgusting because it was the worst thing. She did not want to eat it ever. So yeah, Bojo Fear Factor. That's what we call it. we'll get you together when we're all at Gen Con. We'll have to make that happen.
Nice.
Excellent. So back to Kickstarters. So I think it's interesting that that's one thing that you really look for in a Kickstarter is just clarity. And I think that's a good analogy for all of the board game world right now, because there's obviously so many games. Everyone's talked about that to death, but people don't know what to back and they don't have enough time to look through everything that's coming out. So just being able to get to the root of what this new game is and why I should care as quickly as possible, I think is really important.
I'm kind of the opposite. I watched the video, and that's what all the research I put into a game before I backed it. I have a problem, though.
What do you mean? You have empty shelves behind you.
That is weird.
John has made his decision before he clicks play on that video. He is just...
Usually.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't ever watch them either. I just am not interested in the Kickstarter videos, but all of the other things, I'll dig into every little bit of the page, but I don't know. Just not a video person. I
don't even watch the videos for like the Kickstarters that I'm part of. Like, I don't think I watched the Kids on Bikes video.
Oh man.
I know what this is.
Right. I was there for part of that.
Solid.
Jim says that he follows me on Kickstarter and gets an email every time I batch something.
Oh, that's a lot of emails. I need to filter my Kickstarter emails. That's too many. Wow. So how do you keep those organized? This is a problem. So I own a store in addition to working for Renegade, and we back a lot of games as a store. If there's a retailer option, most of the time we're going to do it. And we have a really hard time keeping track of them. Is there some way that you used to do this so that you know that you're supposed to do things at a certain time?
No. And I get frustrated sometimes because usually like when the backer kit comes out, they'll send an email. But I've had a couple like really big Kickstarters that only mentioned it in the Kickstarter updates. And I just don't read those. Like I backed like 650 Kickstarter projects. There's no way I can read those update emails.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's crazy. And so I always depend on like the separate, it's time to fill out your backer kit emails to know when it's time to do things.
Yeah.
So sometimes John just gets games 3 months after everyone else because he didn't fill out the backer kit for it.
That seems right.
Sometimes I get games that I don't remember backing them. Like I got Miss Thea the other day, and it's fantastic. But I was like, I don't remember backing this game.
But
this happened to me. I backed
Sleep
on
backing.
tour. Yeah, maybe that's what happened. I backed on tour. I'm really happy I did. It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah,
I really was surprised by how much I enjoyed that one. I really like Roll Through America, which is a little tiny dice, like rolling right. But the quality and the upgrades and having those big, nice boards, and it is definitely a little slightly different of a mechanic. I appreciated that. I think it's hard to know when it makes sense to upgrade a game to that extent, because I definitely could have made on tour for, a few dollars at a factory in China. But instead, it's this nice big box with a lot of good upgrades. Have you thought about that much with your own Kickstarters? What things that you want to upgrade?
I mean, usually I work with a lot of companies that are pretty collaborative about it. So, with Pandasaurus, they usually are good at taking feedback. So I like to try to keep that in mind when I'm designing and say like, oh, well, we can do these as, double punch boards or, nice little things like that. Because I think it helps them. But I just try to work with companies that I trust to just do all that stuff too.
Yeah, I self-published one thing and then was like, nah, I'm good. Like, I like to have a publisher make those decisions for me.
Understandable. What's your favorite Kickstarter upgrade you've ever seen inside a box for a game that you played? that was not necessary. It's like just this thing that was only because it was a Kickstarter.
That's a great question.
Oh, I have one that wasn't a Kickstarter, but I don't think it was an upgrade. I think it was just. Have you played Scrabia?
No.
So it has like these 4 punches, and everyone's like, you flip a card, and everyone places that tile, and you're trying to surround these scarabs to like dig them out. But like, there's holes in each one of those, and there are like mountain, like little like rock meeples. They're like this big, like rock sculptures that fit into those spots. They could be anything, like they could be nothing. But there's rock. They're like molded plastic rock things with like a flat bottom that go in each one of those spaces, and they have different sculpts for them.
Wow.
Like they're not all the same sculpt. And this is, I think it's like a $20, $25 game. And I was like, there's no way that this should have had this, but I like it.
That's pretty funny.
It's blue-orange, and I was like, they didn't need to do this, but they did, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's fascinating. What about you, Doug?
Oh, God, that's really tough. Pass.
Okay, that's fair. John, you've backed enough games. You probably have an answer for this one.
Yeah, I really like the first player token in Raccoon Tycoon.
I haven't seen that one yet. I've seen the game. I haven't played it yet, though.
Yeah, the first player token is a wooden piece about this big and about that thick, with like a raccoon and a top hat on it. But it's got to be like $1 worth of wood in production. It's just enormous.
Oh my. That seems pretty silly.
Yeah, I like silly, superfluous stuff a lot of times when it comes to, like, especially like finishing the campaign. You know, I love that we did the pods with Dinosaur Island. And some people got really upset about it. I'm like, oh, you're spending our money on stupid things. But I was like, if we said we were going to give you an art book, nobody would complain. But you get pods with art on them and people lose their minds.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a rule of the internet that you can't make everybody happy, but I do think it's fun to try. Like, we have glow-in-the-dark eggs as one of the Kickstarter upgrades for Terra Below, and there's no good reason for them except that they're hilarious. And it's a little bit of the 80s nostalgia. Like, I had all sorts of stupid glow-in-the-dark things when I was a kid. What I would have loved to have done is, remember those T-shirts that changed colors when they got hot or cold?
Yes.
That's what I really wanted, but that wasn't realistic. I thought that would have been amazing.
That just has to be the con shirt this year for the staff.
It might have to happen. I have to find somewhere that still makes those. I have a feeling they're not exactly in fashion, but I could be wrong. Maybe they're coming back.
So can I say the glow-in-the-dark eggs? Can I just go with
Yes.
that?
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Doug. I'm
Absolutely.
so honored.
I want to do a live stream in the dark with just the glow-in-the-dark eggs.
That's right. Yes, we don't.
Terror Below meets Nyctophobia.
Right.
Oh, see, there's all these reasons you could use them. They're very useful, but that's okay. Exciting. So what's your favorite game that you've played in the last week?
Let me see.
So everyone just looks at me like, what games did I play this week?
Right. So I've started, because I can never remember what I've played. I've decided this year I'm Instagramming every game that I play.
That's such a good idea.
Just one photo.
John and I are actually trying to like record on like the BG Stats app for all of them that we play.
I love the app. That's a really good idea. I need to do that more too. I always forget.
Got my Terror Below play in there.
Hey, that's right. Nice. That's exciting.
So Terror Below is definitely the best game I played this week. And it's also the only game I played this week, but it's definitely the best one.
I'll take that as a win.
Our game day was this last Saturday. I played Miss Thea and really liked that. I was really surprised by how good it is. And I played a bunch of Treasure Island. I think I played like 3 or 4 games of Treasure Island, which is so good.
I haven't even heard of that one. Is it new?
Yeah, it's from Matago, and it's a small release, but essentially one player, I mean, it's a big like 2x2 map on the board, and then everybody has like a smaller to scale version of the board. And the player who is Long John Silver, everything's dry erase. They just put a single dot on the map, on their smaller map, and the other players have to try to find it. And that sounds almost impossible, but there's like a whole thing where Long John Silver is giving clues to the players to like narrow it down, and everyone's like drawing on their little maps and drawing on the big map, and it really feels like you're trying to find a hidden treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that sounds super dope.
It's such a good experience.
It's got art by Vincent Dutrait, which is phenomenal.
That sounds amazing. Cool. And that's coming out this fall, you said?
It's out right now.
It's
just a really small release. You kind of have to hunt around for it.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably so many little games that are just out of this world amazing that either didn't get the marketing or were just such a spur around that people just never hear of them. It's crazy. I think this is such a good time for board games, but I also think that we're missing out on a lot of really cool stuff. And in 10 years, we're going to look back at this time and go hunting, like treasure hunting for all those little good games and reprinting them. Be interesting to see that happen. Well,
how about you? What's the best thing you played in the last week?
So I actually spent the week at New York Toy Fair last week, and I got to play a lot of Renegade games with people who were looking for games for places like Barnes & Noble and Target and Books A Million, but we mostly didn't play full games. So of course we played Terra Below. We played a couple unreleased games that we haven't announced yet. I got to show off, this is kind of neat. So we have talked about Proving Grounds. This is our solo only game. And we don't have the final finished insides of this box, but this will be the final box. So I got to show this off to some people along with some other parts of it that we're working on, like the storybook that comes with it. And so, yeah, that was exciting. This one I'm super pumped about. It was interesting. We got so many requests when we put up Terra Below just day one for a solo mode. And we have this solo game coming out. And I'm just impressed that there's that much excitement about solo games in general. But the more and more I think about it, it does kind of make sense because in all these other hobbies that we've seen in the industry, you've always had a solo experience until we got to board games. And so when you're playing like Warhammer, you paint the minis by yourself. When you play Magic, you deck build and do all these other parts of that experience by yourself, just at your own house thinking about the game. But when you get to board games, the only experiences that you can do by yourself is either designing, which is why I think we saw this incredible just blast of designers coming out of nowhere, or you can play solo games. So I don't think it should be much of a surprise to see as many people excited about having that solo experience as we have. So I can't wait to see if it actually does well once it hits the stores, because you also lose out on that infection rate when you're playing something solo. You don't have all of your friends there to tell them about this game that you just played. But there's a lot of excitement. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Should be
But I think the solo groups like on Facebook and BGG are so
super active.
They're super active, and they really promote the games to each other. So like you don't have that, oh, I played this game with my friend and it's really good, but that you do have those groups kind of replacing that.
I think you're right. That solo community is surprisingly strong and social. Just not exactly what you would expect from people who want to play solo games.
Because they were there by themselves, like they want to tell someone about it.
I think you're right.
They want to share that they've had this experience, even though they had the experience by themselves. Now they get to go and like it's like when you see a movie by yourself and you're like, oh, I gotta go tell everyone about how awesome this movie was.
Yeah.
Like you go watch it and then come back to me and we'll talk about how awesome it was.
That's true. And I do that with books. Like I read weird, wacky books all the time. Like I'm reading the Legend of Drizzt series right now for the very first time, these super old R.A. Salvatore books that just the beginning of so much of this industry with the D&D lore. And I'm so excited about that. Like every person I see, I want to tell them about how this drow came out of the catacombs and nobody else probably cares except for me. But I feel like you're probably right. The solo community does that too. It's a really good observation.
And it's
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dad.
And it's also like for 4 people to play a solo game, they pretty much need 4 copies as opposed to, right? Like
that's true. Neat. Yeah.
Jarrett Melville in the chat said, "Solo community, be right back."
Nice.
So yeah, apparently he wasn't aware that there was an active solo community, but yeah, the Facebook group is super active.
Yeah, that one's called Solo Board Gamer. Is that the one you're thinking of? Yeah, they're awesome. They're always in there chatting and being really, really helpful for each other and talking about new stuff that they found. So, Jarrett, if you have not already signed up for Solo Board Gamer on Facebook, go do that. Are there other solo communities like that too on Reddit or Board Game Group or Board Game Geek? I assume there are, but I haven't seen them.
I know the solo threads on Reddit are pretty active all the time, and BGG does have a solo guild and solo forums.
Nice. Yeah, Danny just mentioned in the chat, we also even started a community for solo games under the Renegade banner because this is part of an ongoing series. So this is just number 1 of the Solo Hero series. So yeah, go join our solo community over there, and Danny put the link in the chat as well.
Yeah, that's great.
If it's like, if I go like another like 2 weeks where no one will play Architects of the West Kingdom with me, I will play it solo. Like,
I
keep bringing it places, and I'm like, I want to play this, and we ended up playing other things. So eventually, I'm just going to put it on my table. I'm like, all right, I'm playing this.
That's a good idea. Oh my gosh, I had this this customer at my store. He's so nice, and he's always very, very enthusiastic about games, but he's never designed anything or anything like that. He just plays a lot of different games. And he comes up to me the other night. He's like, I have this idea for a board game. I'm so excited. I know you're in publishing. Can I tell you about it? And he almost perfectly described Architects of the West Kingdom to the point where I thought he was trolling me. So I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's just Architects. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he legitimately had never heard of the game. I was so sad. So that's next on my list. I want to play that with him this week so he can see what I'm talking about. Poor guy.
That's why I always tell new designers, like, play as many games as you possibly can, because you're going to have some ideas that already exist.
Yeah, that's tough. We have a game coming out later this year that we haven't announced yet, but we are going to very shortly because it is unbelievable to me that nobody else has made this game already, and it's only a matter of time. I am positive that someone else will independently come up with this exact same idea if we don't do it first. So yeah, that does happen.
Running a dinosaur theme park, I have bad news.
There's already 2 of them.
And an expansion.
Oh man, yeah. So what do you do when that happens? Like, it definitely has before. So as a designer, do you just drop it and move on?
So me personally, when I find out somebody else designed the game that I want to design, I'm thankful because I just don't have to design it anymore. Because usually when I'm making the game, it's because it's the game I want to play. And I'm like, oh great, I don't have to make this game. But the thing, I mean, I've got like 30 other games to design, so now that one's out of my head. But when it happens to new designers, I always tell them, like, play that game and figure out how to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, don't let that stop you if that's your vision, or shelve it and come back to it, later and think of a way to make it different and stand out.
Yeah, theme can definitely go a long way in that respect, or that can be the thing that you are unfortunately exactly the same on. But I do think you're right. If you can differentiate it enough, there's room for lots of games in this industry right now.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't had that happen to me yet, where I was like super passionate about something and was like far enough in to consider myself like actually designing it, and then find out that it already existed. So that's worked out great for me so far.
Hey, nice. Good job.
Oh man, you're lucky. It's happened to me a bunch.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
You design a lot more games than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're really upping your chances when you put out as many games as we do. You're over there designing that many games. Yeah, that's a tough experience, but I think you're right. Like, you can grow from that too. Interesting. What other game designer recommendations or tips do you have? We have a lot of game designers that follow our channels.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
For me, one of the big things is getting it to the table as fast as you possibly can. Even if it's just part of the mechanics, even if it's just like, I know this is going to break at this point. That concept of like failing faster, Jeff King, who's a podcaster with All Us Geeks, says that everything's like bells and whistles and fireworks until you get it to the table.
Yeah.
And so it's perfect in your head. Like, it's going to go so smoothly. And then, like, holy mother of God, what's going on here? So that, I think, would be my number one piece of advice.
And that goes along with it too, because you like the longer that you design it in your head, the higher standards it's going to have to try and meet when you actually get it to the table. So like the more you think you're perfecting it, the more it's going to disappoint you when you get it to the table. So you might as well get it there first and just start hacking away at it while it's at the bottom before you build stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just going along with that, it's also important to get it to the table as often as possible during the process, because even when it's almost finished and you've got the graphic design on there, we've still had problems where we realized that the graphic design did not support the mechanics and it made it more difficult to understand the game. So we had to take a step back after we got all the way to the point where we had it almost finished, ready to go to print, all the files are done, and say, hold on, we had a new player play this and they really didn't understand it because of this one little thing. That's a tough lesson to learn.
Yeah, and I think, again, this kind of builds on all those things too. The sooner you realize that a game is going to be very bad at first, the easier it becomes to make that jump. Like, I've learned that my games are just going to be super bad the first time I play them, most likely. And they're probably just going to crash and burn. But if you can find those neat parts about them and focus on them, then it makes it easier to follow through that process.
Yeah, you do a lot of development, like not only on your own games, but on a lot of other people's games too. And I think that's such an undervalued part of the process in our industry right now. A lot of people can have really good ideas for game design, but actually executing it and developing along the way is where the heavy lifting comes in. And your team seems to be particularly excellent at that part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, we meet every week for playtesting, so that helps a lot. That, over the last, have we been meeting for 5 years now, Ian, probably?
I think so.
Yeah, because it was we started meeting just before Dead of Winter came out. So, I mean, we just have gone through the process so many times that, it becomes easier to spot those pitfalls ahead of time and avoid them.
Yeah, that's impressive. I have a group of very passionate board gamers that come to my store and play every Tuesday and Thursday. And I would say there's only one or two of them who would play a prototype with me again, because it's not a very good experience most of the time. They go there to have a good night and relax and enjoy themselves, not to play a terrible prototype. Makes it tough.
Yeah, I used to try to prototype at our monthly game days. And then as soon as we started having these weeknight meetups, I was like, I never want to play a prototype at game day again. That nobody there wants to play a bad game that's not going to be good yet. Right.
Yep. So we did have a question in our chat from Garrett. He said, how incumbent is it on the designer to nail the theme? I have some strong opinions about that. And he also says, I only ask because Days of Wonder gave Bruno Cathala the Arabian Nights idea for 5 tribes. He originally delivered it as an Egyptian title. So if you guys want to answer that, I also have an answer for myself.
I think that it's sort of the symbiotic relationship between the two, that the theme is going to inform your design choices and your mechanics are going to inform the theme as well. And so I think if you go in with a strong theme, it's going to make the design choices easier. If you get stuck, you can just say okay, well, if I were a doctor in Victorian England treating monsters, what would I do at this point? And that makes some of that easier. But that said, I think designers have to not get too hung up on delivering a theme and having that be the thing that it ends as, for a lot of reasons. I think theme goes a lot to marketability, and that's not something that I know or care a lot about as a designer.
Yeah.
So, and I think some designers are really good at designing mechanics, and the theme's kind of indifferent to them. And that's fine. Like, you can do a really great mechanical game that can get almost any theme slapped on it. I've been pretty lucky. Out of the like 13 games that I have, I think only 2 of them have gotten rethemed from what they were originally. But I think that's because I really focus on the overall experience and tying those mechanics so closely to the theme that it's kind of hard to separate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of those ones that got rethemed was one of yours and mine. And when that happened, it was a great time for us to, like, we went back and looked at it and be like, okay, so if this is going to be the new theme,
Right.
what about this experience what can we add to the experience or change about this experience to make it feel like to fit this theme more? And we found like a really cool twist in a rule that was just like one rule in that game changed from the theme that it was to the theme that it is now, and I think it made the game like 20% better than what it was. Like,
which one is that, or are you not allowed to say yet?
Not announced.
Got it.
And yeah, it kind of ties into that IP thing, because sometimes you hold yourself back based on the theme, and when you look at it from a different perspective, you are not taking some of the design decisions that you could, because you're like, oh, this doesn't fit the theme. But when you throw that out and look at it with fresh eyes, you can come up with new things that you just weren't doing before.
So I've worked on being part of the team that did a lot of licensed games. And so obviously you don't have a choice on the theme if you know that you're making something for Walking Dead or for Adventure Time. That theme is already there. So then it's, in some ways, that is nice because you don't have to figure out what is going to make sense in the world or any of that stuff. Is already there and baked in. And then you can focus on making mechanics that make sense within that framework. And you also have the advantage of knowing exactly who your audience is. With a regular game, you may have this great concept, great idea, and add a theme to it that also fits and seems like a really good idea, but there's no audience for that combination of those mechanics in that theme. So like a game about doll houses or like paper mache dolls or something, but you're trying to target a very adult, like heavy Euro gamer experience, those two things, unless you're making Rococo, probably don't go together.
I don't know. I feel like that's a challenge, and now I want to design that game.
Okay, please make that game for me, because that sounds hilarious. But yeah, I think that when you're dealing with licensed games, obviously you have to think about it a little bit differently. But even with games like Terror Below, when we got the game design from Mike Elliott, who is an incredibly famous designer, he's the most prolific TCG designer on the planet, incredible guy. We looked at it and said, well, okay, it's about these mining robots on the moon collecting rocks. The mechanics were great, but we thought maybe there's a bigger audience for a slightly different theme. And as you said, that also informed some of the choices that the development team made and added these cool extra mechanics. And a lot of the card text is very much fitting with the theme that we found. So it really goes any way depending on the exact game. And I think that's kind of neat that there's so much variability.
I think one of the worst experiences was when we did a specific IP-based game, and then the publisher was like, "Oh, we don't know if we want to do that IP. Make it work for this IP."
Oh.
Oh no, they're like completely. I mean, there's some similarities, but they're different, and you can't just put that. You can't shoehorn it like that.
Yeah, fans catch on to things like that. That's tough. Oh, man. Well, this has been a fabulous discussion, but I believe that it is time for our giveaway.
Yay.
And since you have mostly worked on or are tangentially related to Kids on Bikes, we are going to be giving away a copy of Kids on Bikes Deluxe. And to make it as fair as possible, Danny is going to, oh, there we go. We have teacher resources giving us a demonstration. We are going to have Danny type in the question in chat. So watch carefully in chat. She's going to put there, and the first person to correctly answer this, who is not named John, Ian, or Doug, will win a copy. If any of the three of you still need a copy, let me know. So that will, oh, there we go. So I'll read the question out loud as well. Who designed the Dads on Mowers module in the Deluxe Edition / Strange Adventures Volume 1? Do you guys know the answer?
One of my favorite modules.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Oh, I'm surprised nobody's written it yet.
Here's a hint. It's one of my favorite RPG designers.
That's understandable too.
It's taken a while. We may have said this name earlier on the stream.
Hey, Jack was paying attention. Good job, Jack. Yeah. You are the first person to correctly guess Banana Chan. I had tea with her in New York this week, so I was thinking about her. Excellent. So Jack, if you have a of Bikes Deluxe, we will ship that out to you. We know where to find you.
And Doug's there with the
hey, nice. And if you haven't gotten a chance to read this module yet, please go pick up a copy of this because it is excellent. I want to go play that right now, actually. Nice. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you, chat, for being so fantastic this whole time, asking lots of good questions and hanging out with us. And I believe we will be back in 2 weeks. Our Kickstarter still has 1 week left. So if you're interested in Terra Below, go check that out. And you can find it on Kickstarter just by searching for Terra Below. It'll pop up. And Doug, Ian, and John, starting with Doug, where can we find you on social media afterwards?
I am on Facebook, Doug Levandowski, or on Twitter @Levzilla, LEVZILLA.
Nice. Ian, where would we find you later?
So my name is Ian Moss. You can find me on Facebook. On Twitter, it's chaos_Moss. And I am also one half of the Infectious Play Live with John. So if you search Infectious Play Publishing on Facebook, you'll find us there also.
And John, would you like anyone to find you?
I generally try to hide, but yeah, I'm Jonathan Gilmour on Facebook and @John Gilmour, JONGILMOUR on Twitter. And then Infectious Play. And if you go and check out, we have a stream from today of Terra Below. So if you want to see a little bit more of the gameplay, please try it out.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Chat, we will talk to you in 2 weeks. We'll have another one of these. And have fun. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.